the B Plus is growing, and we want you to be a part of it. So if you have an idea for a podcast, or if you want to write reviews for shows, whether that's WWE, New Japan, local shows especially, we have a big focus on Aussie Graps here. So if you go out to shows in Melbourne, we specifically need people in New Zealand, Tasmania, and Queensland. If you go out to shows in those areas, please let us know. We would love to hear from you. We would love to work with you. If you have a passion for wrestling and you want to write about anything wrestling, it can be anything. It can be listicles, it can be in-depth articles, opinion pieces, show reviews, whatever you want to do. If it's wrestling, it's fair game. Shoot us a message or send an email to thebplus@unchained.media. That's thebplus@unchained.media. Let us know what you want to do, and we'll get back to you, and we'll work something out, because the B Plus is growing, and we want to grow the B Plus family. Now, on with the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event of the evening.
Hold one, Andre.
You're not good at this. Get out. Let me tell you a personal story about Vince McMahon.
You just made the list.
Sorry, no speak English.
Dummy. Goodbye and good night. Hold two, on bar.
It's still real to me, damn it.
Dummy.
This is the worst town I've ever been in.
Hold three, the moss covered, three-handle family grudunzel.
Mamma mia!
And now,
Unchained.media presents the B Plus Podcast with your host, Greg Unchained.
it's me, Austin. It was me all along, Austin. Number four, armbar. I will never retire. I still got 200 more. I got 200 more holes to lift.
All right, fellow B Plus players, welcome to the B Plus Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Unchained. Today is Thursday. You know what that means. It's time for another bonus episode. Once again, we're going to take a look at some Aussie Graps, specifically EPW, much like we did last week. EPW Reawakening, the biggest show of the calendar year in Perth, has come and gone. And joining us to talk about it, once again, Kevin Chiat. How are you, Kevin?
Hi, Greg. I'm good. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on again, man. Now, so I didn't say it was debatable this time. Did you notice that? I said it's definitely the biggest wrestling event in the Perth calendar year.
Well, I'm glad you've come to my side of the argument there. I guess you can have a talk with Mr. Mysterious as to what he thinks about you saying that. But
He brought it up. He said, after he listened to the podcast, he said, "You're a cheeky bastard." Because he said he wouldn't argue that it's the biggest. He knows where things stand. He's obviously he does do some work with New Horizons and what have you. And he's also a big fan, much like I am. He's a big fan of Schwa, but yeah, he says obviously EPW are the biggest company. Like anyone who would argue that would probably be an insane person. So he knows where he stands.
I did see on NHPW's latest ads they have. I believe the wording was Perth's biggest wrestling show featuring male and female talent, which is technically true. So good for them. I'm a big fan of technically true advertising.
Yeah, technically true advertising is always fun. Like when you look at it and you go, hang on, no, yeah, I can't argue that. It's always fun when that happens. But we're here to talk about EPW Reawakening. So the show has come and gone, and it started with a live stream. They live streamed the end of year awards, which was nice. So I got to watch it from home. I'm not a big fan of some of the results, which you can guess because of our predictions. But let's take us through the awards.
Sure thing. So should we start with Rookie of the Year? Which
Rookie of the Year
was won by Tippene of the Taylor King Task Force, beating out his team member Jack Edwards, who was the only other nominee.
Yeah, and that was one that we both agreed on in predicting. We both agreed Tippene.
Yes, I think, as I said last week, to me it was kind of a choice as to whether you were going more for the ring work of Tippene and the ring presence versus more the character work of Jack Edwards. Jack, if you've been following him on social media, he has been upfront. He's trying to be supportive of his teammate. I think there's some maybe hidden resentment towards not getting the award.
Yeah, it definitely looks like that's the way things are going. I think it's great though, because he immediately came out and was like, "It's a joint award. We both win," which I found very entertaining.
And I think it's worth saying as well. I believe on the Turnbuckle interview that Slater did last week, he made a big point of really talking up Tippene as well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Tippene is great. He's a very exciting prospect, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's to come in the next year. But then let's talk about the first one where we diverged. I think you picked all of these, I believe, and I was off on a couple.
Pretty much. I think with the match of the year, the one that won was the one I thought was going to win, even though it wasn't the one that I voted for.
Yes, yeah, that's what I mean. You picked all of them, and I was like, no, the ones I want to win will win. But Progress X EPW is the winner of Event of the Year. I thought it should have been Vendetta. I liked Vendetta, personally, and I know you disagreed with that. You said that the Progress one. But I don't know, I just feel filthy a little about the fact that, the show of the year for an Australian company is one that relied on outside talent, if that makes sense. Is that a weird gripe to have?
I think it's a bit of a weird gripe. I think
I can acknowledge that.
What the best show of the year presented by a company is, you should look at, honestly, what was the best show of the year, what had the most hype, what delivered to the highest level throughout an entire card. Whereas I think back to Vendetta, and that had like the really bad Gorgeous Gary versus Billy Williams match, which was probably number 2 for worst match of the year at EPW this year. So there was stuff on Vendetta that to me took it down a lot further than the low points of the Progress show. And I think the high points of the Progress show were just probably unmatched by anything else at EPW this year.
Yeah, I look at it and I'm like, it was a co-promoted show though. It has an advantage because it was 2 companies, it wasn't just one. And the other thing was Vendetta had the cage match, the crowning of a king. You can tell I'm a little bit of a Gavin mark, but let's move on. Taylor King takes out Most Improved, his second time winning the award.
Yes, his first time, I believe, was in 2015. Again, Taylor has done really well this year. He's improved both his ring work and his character work and his microphone skills. He's just more composed than he was even a couple of years ago, where he would kind of just blurt out everything that came into his head when he was on the microphone. Now he's a bit more composed in his delivery. And yeah, I thought a very deserving winner of that.
Yeah, so this is another one we agreed on. And I think that it was quite emotional too, because he's out at the moment and he's not able to compete. And so he was there with his arm in the sling and he was like, it's going to be bigger and better things when I get back, which was nice to hear.
Yeah, and Taylor, for all of his exhaustive nature, is underneath it all a good guy, and I really hope that he's able to come back to action as quickly as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And match of the year, the Untouchables versus Street Gang Hooligans, the 3 Stages of Hell match.
Yep, and as I said in our preview last week, phenomenal match. Really one of the highlights, I think, for Australian wrestling for the whole year.
Yeah.
And I obviously can't really argue with it. As I said last week, I voted number 1 for the Davis Storm Pete Dunne match, but it's a very deserving winner.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where it falls off the rails for me. This is where I'm very disappointed in the EPW fans. The Perth fans are not doing much to ingratiate themselves with me, personally. The Don Michael Morleone, who I am a fan of, took out Wrestler of the Year when clearly the correct answer was Gavin McGavin. What's going on?
Well, as I was telling you before we started recording, your name was brought up by some EPW officials as they were looking at the reaction to the live stream regarding you saying that Gavin was robbed.
Gavin was robbed.
I think that Two things. Number one, in terms of the fans, I think everyone thinks that another year of Gavin carrying around a Wrestler of the Year plaque would be a bit overkill in terms of his character.
Well, then they're not voting honestly, because it's not about whether the person should carry around a plaque. It's about whether or not the person deserves the plaque in the first place.
The other thing is that Don has had a fantastic year, I think.
He has.
To me,
Yes.
throughout all of WA, he's been the most consistently good performer. Don also, I have a strong suspicion that he'll also take the industry-voted version of that as well. It seems to me like the consensus within Perth wrestling is that Don had the strongest year.
Yeah, that's something I was going to mention, actually, is if it was Western Australia, if it was overall, if it wasn't just EPW, I would probably be inclined to agree with the Don Michael Molione, because his work outside of EPW is something that's also caught my eye. But just when you take it specifically for EPW, I still think Gavin McGavin had the edge there with the matches, the match quality, if you talk within kayfabe, the actual match results. I don't know, just for me personally, I felt like, and I voted that way, obviously. It's not just because I'm a fan of the character. Like, I legitimately thought that was the way it should go. But, you know, the Don is absolutely deserving. Don't get me wrong. And I am a fan of what he does. But I just thought that within EPW, I thought Gavin had to take it. And if fans voted against him just so he wouldn't have the plaque, I think that's a misuse of fan voting power, and there should be a recall.
Well, what can I say? There's only so much you can push people.
Fair enough. I guess it's not for everyone, is it? But then that's the extent of my knowledge regarding what happened. I mean, obviously, I know the winners of the matches and what have you, because the results have been posted, and you sent me through the results as well, I believe. So let's talk about it. What actually happened after that? So that's my knowledge. That's the live stream done and dusted. What happened after that?
Yep, after live stream, we had the beginning of the actual show, Reawakening 17. I know that when we were talking last week, I said that I thought it had the potential to top last year, which I think is the best show that EPW's ever done. I wouldn't say it was quite as good as last year in terms of overall match quality throughout the entire card. There's a couple booking decisions which I'm a bit, not necessarily unhappy, but a bit unsure of in terms of how the card was put together. But right. It was a very good show, I'd say. If we're talking about a show just run by EPW, probably the strongest one of the year. The new venue is Gate 1 Theatre. It's pretty cool, and I think it'll look a lot better live. I think it'll look a lot better on tape than the old venue did.
Right, that was something I wanted to touch on, was the new venue and whether it was, you know, what the difference was. Did it feel different? Because, you know, some venues just have that vibe where you're just like, this is going to be a great place for wrestling.
I think that they did a pretty good job of setting up the space to have the right vibe for the night, especially, okay. And I'm not sure if this will be at every show or just the bigger shows. They did have seating on the stage, so you'll see some other shows which have been there where they just use the big stage as the entranceway, and it can look a little empty around the talent, whereas with here you had fans on each side of the stage and the wrestlers coming down a ramp that was set out on the stage. So I think that gave it more atmosphere, and we can also see, I suppose, that people can drink wherever they want in the venue. That might also have an impact on how the crowd responds at and in the future.
Absolutely. And then we get into the actual matches themselves. So the show started with Gorgeous Gary and Lord Jonathan Wimbledon against the TK Task Force.
Yes, that was the first opening match. As we said last week, it was a replacement for the Invitational Final with Taylor's injury.
Yeah. Was Taylor at ringside?
He was. Of course, he was awesome. At ringside. Didn't really get that involved in the match, obviously protecting the arm.
Yes.
You might have seen some look with disdain at Jack Edwards' performance from him. And probably the highlight of the match was Gorgeous Gary's entrance. He came out, I don't know if you've seen the pictures, a glitter-filled beard. And I think EPW Reawakening 17 will forever be remembered throughout the rest of the company's history as the show in which everyone had glitter on them the entire night.
Because of the glitter in the ring.
It doesn't ever disappear.
No, it doesn't go away. That'll be there for a while. The glitter beard is a phenomenon that I am well aware of, and I have been encouraged strongly to do it, especially at Christmas time. And I've never done it. Might have to speak to Gary about whether it's worth doing.
Yeah, I think that's a good topic for when you interview Gary. I think that's how the experience of glittering up his beard went.
Yeah.
So
I can't like he probably still has it in there. There's no way that he's free of it yet.
I would suggest that you're probably right.
So Gary and Jonathan end up taking the victory though?
Yes, they did. They won. It was a good, fairly quick match. A lot of fun. I thought everyone came off well, and it was a good way to open the card.
Yeah, they're a good group of guys to be opening the card, I think.
Mm.
Then we had Dan Steele and his mystery attacker, right? So what ended up happening there?
So, as we were saying last week, my suspicion ended up being correct, and the mystery attacker was Dan Moore. So his
former partner, yeah,
Jared Slate's former partner.
Yes, sorry, yeah, Jared Slate's former
partner. Dan Moore returned as far as we know, the mystery attacker who was taking out the headhunters, and so it was Dan Moore's proper return match. He did a few matches on the Royal Show cards in September, but it was really his first proper match of the year. I thought that Dan looked pretty. I thought it's hard. I can't just use Dan to talk about either of them. I have to be specific because their first name is both Dan.
Yeah.
Dan Moore, I thought he looked good in his return. The highlight was probably he had a really nice looking moonsault that I thought might have been the finish. I was a little disappointed in the finish of the match because it ended up being both guys are brawling into the crowd and then they both get counted out finish.
Right, well, that's your classic setting up a feud finish, though.
Kind of.
A double count out, time limit draw, that kind of thing, if you're talking classic old school wrestling. I like it, personally.
I feel especially for Reawakening, which is meant to be EPW's version of WrestleMania, to me, I would avoid non-finishes where possible, especially if they don't come off particularly heated or with a really clear next direction. So you're of the season finale should have no cliffhangers mindset. Primarily, I mean, you can set up new feuds, obviously, and you have to set up something to bring people in for the next show and for the start of shows again in the new year. I just felt like giving Dan Moore the win here on his return would have been better for the crowd and better for the show overall. Fair enough. Look, I can see that. I can absolutely see that. But still, I'm interested to see how it plays out on tape and where it goes. But yeah, double count-out finish. I'm not opposed to it in principle. But as you said, being sort of the season finale type show, the WrestleMania, if you want to call it that, then yeah, I guess it is kind of, you got to be a lot more careful with doing these sorts of things on those shows. Yeah. Yeah. And then Kyle Steria and David Nero get the victory over AZ Vergara and Jay Taylor to become the number one contenders to the EPW Tag Team Champions. Yes. This was a fun match. As I said last week, Kyle and David Nero are a really good team together. So the Tailor-Made Diamonds, as Jay Taylor and AZ Vergara are called, they did come out at the start with joint theme music, and AZ Vergara tried to hang on the ropes like Jay Taylor does. He didn't quite get it right. Okay. There was a little moment of tension, but it seemed like that blew over, or they were doing it as a tease to try and psych out their opponent. So it does actually seem, unlike what I expected, it does seem like Jay Taylor and AZ Vergara are going to be teaming together for going on into next year. Right, so they're trying to work through the tensions. Yeah, I'm sure they went to couples therapy at some point. Maybe we'll get some skits with them seeing a therapist. It is worth pointing out as well. I noticed this at the last NHPW show he was on, But Jay Taylor does have a new jacket after his old jacket was starting to break down, which is very good to see. It's a very nice, swish-looking red sequined jacket.
Can't argue with sequins on ring gear.
It was a fun match. Kyle and David Nero went over. Kyle did his running powerbomb off the stage into the ring, which I've seen him do at some other shows, but this is the first time he's really had the environment at an EPW show to pull it off.
Yeah.
And so it looks like we have a big tag team match coming up for the tag titles with Nero and Stereo versus the Street Gang Hooligans. And
Right, which I will, spoiler alert, that's the main event.
I feel like if you're listening to a recap of the show before it's gone up on tape, I'm sorry for not being...
Spoilers are absolutely fair
I'm
game.
sorry for not being entirely sequential in my description of how the night went.
So Stereo and Nero versus Street Gang Hooligans will be a good one to see as well.
And their match at Vendetta, I thought that was really great, and I'm looking forward to seeing it again.
Yeah, with the stakes raised a little. And then Jonah Rock. So this is where we said last week that it's getting into any of these could steal the show territory. Jonah Rock and Julian Ward. How did this one go?
This was really good. I thought that both men brought it. I thought that Jonah came off as a superstar. Julian worked from the bottom for most of the match. He took a hell of a beating. If you want to have a look at Julian's Twitter account, you can see the picture of how destroyed his chest was after some of the slaps that he took from Jonah. I thought this was really, really good. Really enjoyed it. Jonah won and put over Julian really strong in his post-match promo.
Right.
One of the funny things was the Gate 1 Theatre is at the Claremont Showgrounds in Perth, which is where the Perth Royal Show always happens. And there was another event going on the same evening. So for whatever reason, there were fireworks going off from this other event, which were going off around the time of the Julian Ward Jonah Rock match. And I think everyone inside just thought that was the sound of Jonah's slaps we were hearing with the fireworks. Didn't have any idea about the fireworks because Jonah was just so loud in this match. His movements, his attacks. Jonah really is a beast, and he's really one of the most impressive guys in Australian wrestling and in independent pro wrestling, the whole world.
Yeah, I've never seen him have a bad match.
Yeah.
So
it was really fun. Julian took a hell of a beating. If I had one note of critique for Julian is that sometimes he wasn't necessarily responding to Jonah with the strikes with the same intensity that Jonah was giving him.
Right.
But I thought it was a great match, and I hope everyone gets to see it soon.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. That's something else we should say is I'm going into this blind because the show is not, as we record this, it's the middle of the week. The show has not yet made its way to Vimeo, but it will. It'll make its way probably normally by the weekend following or, early next week it tends to go up. So looking forward to that. Definitely looking forward to seeing that match.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Sorry to interrupt the podcast, B+ players, but I just need to take a second to tell you about Threadbox. Threadbox is a subscription service for men that makes looking good easier than ever before. Just fill out a few questions to start building your style profile, and from there you will be paired with a stylist who will send you new threads once a month so you don't have to worry about checking the stores and finding new clothes. It's like having a personal shopper and stylist at your fingertips, and you just sit back, relax, wait for your awesome new gear to arrive in the mail. They sent me a box this month. I got a new pair of jeans. I got 2 shirts. You can check out the unboxing video on the Facebook page. And the best part about it is you can get in touch with your stylist by email at any time. So if you need new singlets, if you need new long sleeves, if you need new shoes, if there's something specific you want, you just let them know what you need and they'll tailor the box to your specific requests. It's a completely personalized service available on any budget. You'll always get way more value than you pay for because Threadbox work with all the best brands. Boxes start from just $40, and if you use our code, the B+15 at checkout today, you're going to get 15% off your first box. So what are you waiting for, man? Like, if you want to look better with less effort, head to threadbox.com.au and use the code TheB+15 to get your box today. And then the next one as well was another one that I had picked as a sleeper hit. The Don, Michael Morleone, and Hayden Zenith. How did this one play out?
So like we were talking earlier with the Dan Steele, Dan Moore match, this was another one with a non-finish, which again, doing two non-finishes on the same show wasn't something I was particularly a fan of.
Especially with this one being the most personal match on the show.
Yeah, so they ended up using this as a build-up for next show, where they're going to have Don and Hayden in a no DQ match. And it feels to me like that will get the chance that this one didn't quite get to be the big match of the feud and to really let them go full force. It was a bit problematic. They were coming back after intermission. They were the match after intermission. People were kind of still getting into their seats as Don came out. Hayden came in with another distraction via video and sneaking in from behind to attack Don. A lot of the action in it was good. It ended with Hayden getting DQ'd for hitting Don with a chair. And then Hayden tried to run away and Don called him a coward, which unfortunately for Hayden, you are a coward at the moment. And there was the challenge for the no DQ match for next show, Hot Summer's Night.
Hot Summer's Night, which takes place in,
I think, early February. I don't have the
early. Yeah. No, I don't have the date either. But I was thinking the Hot Summer's Night last year was in February. Yeah. So we've got a while to wait for this one. But I don't know. To me, in terms of pacing with a show, it could work out better for them to have this match be this way. Since, with what was to come and presumably what had just been with the Jonah Rock match before intermission, you don't want the match getting lost in the shuffle, right? This way, putting them in a no DQ match further down the line, they'll hopefully have more chance to shine. It'll be a more featured match potentially.
I suspect that's the idea behind it, and I really think that the next match will have more focus and more of an opportunity to really be a main event level match. I would have liked to see Hayden win because I thought that giving him the win at Reawakening would mean more than if he wins at the next show. And I thought it would have given more juice to the feud. And honestly, there was a bit where as Hayden's going away through the crowd after he's been DQ'd and Don's like calling him a chicken shit heel and saying, you want a no DQ match? Well, let's do it next. Let's do it next show. Honestly, I would have rather had Don gone, you want a no DQ match? Let's do it right now. And Don kind of
let's do it right
the
now.
challenge on right there because he's the valiant babyface, even though he's doing a dumb thing. And then having Hayden actually like quickly get the win. So again, not a fan of the two non-finishers on Reawakening. Really think it would have been better for Hayden to get a victory, whether it's clean or probably preferably being a dirty victory.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to see what they do at Hot Summer's Night. I think they're going to have a real showcase, a real opportunity to have the big showcase match that I want to see from both of them.
Yeah, and I can see where you're coming from with that. That would have been a good way for it to play out as well. But again, like with time and stuff, I understand why these things have to happen sometimes, and I'm looking forward to the Hot Summer's Night match for sure. Then we get the real wrestler, Gavin McGavin, in the real main event with the big rig Scotty Ryan for the EPW Championship. After this, I assume everyone just got up and left because the real main event had occurred. What happened? You really don't like my Gavin markiness, do you?
Well, okay. So, for people who listened to the last preview or read my preview for Voices of Wrestling, You would have known that I was a bit critical of the booking of this match, and I didn't necessarily think that Scotty Ryan was the right challenger at this point for the EPW Championship. In terms of the match, I thought it was good. I thought it had a really strong beginning and ending. To me, the middle lagged a bit. I know that other people who were there are higher on the match than I am. If I were to compare it to their series in 2017, I'd say it was probably better than their first match. I didn't think it was as good as the cage match they did. I just thought that the cage match was kind of better laid out. What was interesting, and I am interested to see how this comes off on tape, because it was a quite divided crowd. And me and friend of the show, friend of B Plus Rose, were some of the cheerleaders for the Gavin McGavin section on Saturday.
Right, so you're in the Gavin McGavin section, but you still pick on me when I say it was the real main event and all that sort of stuff.
Because the real main event was the ladder match. I have great respect for Gavin, but that's bullshit.
But any match with Gavin McGavin, especially I should say this right. Any match with the Grand Slam champion, the EPW champion, the 2017 Wrestler of the Year, the real 2018 Wrestler of the Year, because he was robbed, Gavin McGavin. It's going to be the main event, even if it's not in the main event spot. It's the main reason people are there.
I can't argue with you when you're like this, Greg. So anyway,
but there it is. So, but Gavin McGavin picks up the win.
Submission win, which was somewhat surprising. He won with the ankle lock. He did the kind of Kurt Angle grapevine ankle lock, which I'm a big fan of.
Nice.
I thought that, as I said, I thought the match maybe went a bit longer than it needed to. Scotty came out to new music and new gear, which was very separate from the kind of Gen Zero stuff, which really does suggest to me that Gen Zero is essentially finished as a faction.
Right.
As I said last week, to me, the big test regarding Scotty Ryan is what he does next, because I'd seen him have good matches with Gavin McGavin. I haven't really seen him have good matches with other people. So in terms of where I stand as Scotty as a potential main eventer, or where I stand on where he should be on cards, I really do have to see what he does next as still Coastal champion.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the so-called main event. Quote, of course, this was the main event. The Street Gang Hooligans challenging the Untouchables, who are, as we discussed last week, probably the best tag team in the country. Don't at me. Marcus Pitt and Damian Slater in a ladder match for the EPW Tag Team Championships. Was it as good as I expect it will be?
Oh, it was phenomenal. It was two teams going all out, I think. One of the best spot fests you'll see this year. One of the best ladder matches, certainly the best ladder match I've seen live. And to me, I would go back and go, okay, their match at last year's Reawakening, I thought was maybe a better representation of what's the most popular style in independent wrestling at the moment, in terms of mixing up traditional tag team psychology with impressive athletic maneuvers and characters that people care about. So to me, it's as great a wrestling match as that first one was, but as a spectacle, the reaction when the Street Gang Hooligans win is by far the biggest reaction I've heard at an EPW show.
That's good. That's good to hear. I mean, I think it was time, right? Like we said this last week, we both predicted that they would walk out champions. It was time. And, who better to put them over than the Untouchables? I'm really looking forward to this one when it comes out on Vimeo.
Yeah, I think
as much as it's not the main event in my heart, I'm really looking forward to this, to watching this match.
I think it's a match that will definitely hold up on tape. Logan Gray, everyone had a phenomenal performance, but I particularly have to point out Logan Gray doing a shooting star off the ladder to the outside, taking one of the most disgusting bumps I've ever seen. Like, it's hard to explain. You'll know it when you
Wait, to an empty ladder?
kind of like a flip over German taking it to the face on a ladder.
Okay.
Kingston took a German, I think, back first onto an opened up ladder on its side. There's a lot of stuff I think people are going to be really impressed by what they were willing to do to each other. I think it's not just a stunt show. There's some really great storytelling throughout it, like especially the periods where Logan Gray is by himself and trying to fight off the Untouchables. I think it's a match that everyone in Australia should be making sure to go out of their way to see.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the Street Gang Hooligans' potential as just like that babyface tag team that could absolutely take the country by storm. And yeah, against, I mean, Marcus Pitt is just vicious. And Damian Slater is one of the best this country has ever produced. And so to have Logan fighting them both off, I can imagine. I can see it in my head, like the sympathy. Yeah, definitely one to watch. Would you put it up there in match of the year contendership territory, or
in terms of Australian match of the year? Definitely, I think it's up there. To me, I'd say the Australian match of the year is Eagles versus Osprey from Coulter Arms.
Right.
Me, I've got it very close to it. Very close to it. I also had another rant about crowd behavior. I don't know if you saw this on social media.
I did. I saw a little bit, and feel free, go loose, let loose. I love a good rant. Some of the worst people in the world can be found in wrestling crowds. So let loose.
People I'm going to complain about are the worst people in the world.
No, I know. I'm just saying that oftentimes I can find myself, as a wrestling fan, I can oftentimes find myself thinking, why are wrestling fans the way they are? You know? So.
Yeah. But there were a few people in the crowd who were a little bit behind me, who kind of were acting in a way that I think is unfortunately something we see quite common at Australian shows, even more so than US or UK indies. And that is just kind of trying to pop themselves and their friends rather than honestly react to the show and just being kind of snarky dickheads.
Yeah.
To me, I will say that these guys, they weren't saying anything sexist, racist, homophobic. So in that sense, it wasn't a problem. But I just thought that when you're at a show where you have a ladder match like this, where you have four guys killing themselves to put on a once-in-a-lifetime style performance. And I mean, Damian Slater is pretty clear he never wants to do another ladder match again.
Yeah. Well, he did say in the build-up as well, like in those two interviews he did with Wrestle Radio and with On the Turnbuckle, which I feel left out. They both had him on in that 1 week, and I didn't. I feel a little left out, but he did mention that they were going to go out there and kill themselves for this one. So it's not like it's specifically they're going out there and really, really working their asses off and putting their bodies and lives on the line to entertain you.
I feel like when you're at a show and it's a ladder match or any sort of gimmick, anything which is, weird wrestling shit, when you're going, what were they saying? They were saying like, you can't win outside when people are doing their spots outside with the ladder. I mean, if you want a realistic ladder match, it should take about 30 seconds. Because,
right.
You know that people can actually climb ladders a lot faster than wrestlers climb ladders in ladder matches, mate.
They slow down for the dramatic tension.
Yes, there's a general thing that I think sometimes comes up more so at Australian shows than others because, there's a cultural thing of trying to boost up the idea of the friendly ocker who's just having a laugh, mate. But just don't make the show itself a joke. Laugh with the performers, not at them. Especially when it's not a case where this is a funny match or this is going for comedy. There's a podcast called WrestleSplania, which I quite like, and that's run by two women from the US. And they were talking about how there should be a rule at wrestling shows that you get one joke as an audience member throughout the night. You get one joke you get to shout out, and the rest of the time you cheer, chant, boo like normal, but only try to be funny once. Because let's face it, most of us wrestling fans are not naturally funny.
Yeah, I like it. I like that rule because as well, it's going to force those fans to really think about it, and maybe what they come out with will be better. Because if you're not just throwing a bunch of shit at the wall to see if it sticks, if you only get one piece of shit, you're going to make sure it's your stickiest piece of shit.
I know that on a past Aussie Graps you discussed Davis Storm's Don't Be Shit Twitter rant.
Yes.
And I think that applies to fans as well. So fans, especially if you're someone who cares about local wrestling, just don't go into it with the mindset of, I'm trying to be part of the show here by making my funny comments that make my mates laugh. Just don't go into shows with that mindset, please. Yeah,
well, that's it. We're all in it together, especially in a small scene like Australia. We're all in it together trying to make it grow. So yeah, we need to go into it with that right mindset, and I think that extends down to fans as well. So yeah, don't be shit. I think David Storm said it best. Don't be shit. Absolutely. But that does it for the EPW Reawakening show. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we go home?
We've hit most of the main points I wanted to talk about. I did want to make mention, I know last week we talked about the AAW show, and I believe Mr. Mysterious was going to that. So I assume you'll have a report on the B+ soon. I did hear that the Craven Ajax match went really well there, which I'm glad to hear. And definitely Craven's a guy who I'm keen to see not just in Perth, but all throughout Australia and internationally next year. That's about it. Thank you for having me again, Greg. It's a pleasure to talk, and a pleasure to talk about a damn fine show, such as what Reawakening 17 was.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on and sharing your thoughts with us. And where can people find you if they want to hear more of your thoughts on wrestling?
People can find me on Twitter at Kevin Chiat, Chiat. You can also find me on Instagram, KL. You'll see a lot of pictures of my dog Juno on my Instagram. Probably the main reason to follow my Instagram. And also,
yes, I have noticed.
Also, I have a Facebook page called KL Cult Promotions, and we will hopefully be running some wrestling screenings in early next year.
Right, looking forward to it. And I am, as always, at GregUnchained on Twitter, at the GregUnchained on Instagram. We are the B+ Wrestle on Twitter because wrestling wouldn't fit, and the B+ Wrestling everywhere else. If you like what you heard, please leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And thank you so much for listening.
Hold one! Arm drag! You're not doing this. Get out. Let me tell you a personal story about Vince McMahon. You just made the list. Oh my God!
Sorry, no speak English.
Dummy! Goodbye and good night. Hold two! Arm bar!
This is the worst town I've ever been in.
It's still real to me, damn it! Dummy! Hold three! The moss-covered, three-handle family grununcle! Mamma mia! It's me